Holy shit, I just need to start this right off by saying, my God, was this not the best fucking episode of MTV Scream ever? I'm sorry, I'm just going to throw that out there. Spoiler alert for the rest of this. But, yeah, I can't contain it. Usually I watch these twice. It is like 10 o'clock in the morning right now. I just watched it, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to watch Scream. I did not expect the episode to be that fucking good, consistently that fucking good. And how it ended, no spoilers, we'll get into that at the very end. But how it ended, I was like, yes, bring on the pain. This episode was awesome. I'm really thinking about subtitling it. Killer Theories, not for episode, 5, but for Killer Theories, best episode of MTV Scream yet. Good stuff. Just need to get that out of the way. Let's get started. 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 Hey guys, this is Mike. Welcome back to Fright Flicks and Killer Theories for MTV Scream. This episode we're going to go into episode 5, Dawn of the Dead. Again, all named after horror movies. I actually thought this one was going to be called Jeepers Creepers, but they jumped ahead to Dawn of the Dead. The next episode, this is all coming from IMDb, by the way, so take it with a grain of salt. The next episode is called Jeepers Creepers. The one after that is Let the Right One In, then Village of the Damned, The Orphanage, The Vanishing, and finally, as far as they have up, Heavenly Creatures. Now, if you haven't seen any of those, pretty much go watch all of them. But specifically, The Vanishing and Heavenly Creatures. Heavenly Creatures is like Peter Jackson, one of Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, King Kong. One of his first movies. Definitely go check that out. Young Kate Winslet, very good movie. The Vanishing and The Orphanage, my top picks. Anyway, so Dawn of the Dead, written by Heath Corson. And he, strangely enough, his writing credits include Lego Scooby-Doo, Batman Unlimited, Tom and Jerry, Justice League cartoon movie called Throne of Atlantis, and a Halo miniseries, Fall of Reach. Yeah, this guy's a really good writer, so definitely keep him on, guys. Then the episode was directed by Oz Scott, who has directed... I looked him up on IMDb. This guy's basically directed every single TV show that has ever existed. I'm not kidding. Go look him up just to see how much I'm not kidding. He has seriously directed every single show. But his specific credits include episodes of Gotham, American Gothic, which is an old horror show from the 90s with Lombard from Office Space in it. Produced by Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert. And this one is pretty strange, but this is really cool. He directed 40, I'm not joking, 40 episodes of The Jeffersons. I don't know, works for me. I was gonna make a joke. This show's moving on up, so that makes sense to me. Alright, yeah, but let's get right into it then. So, the sheriff arrives on the scene right after the body falls, basically. And he just, shuts this motherfucker down. Teachers, parents outside, they're like, let me see my kids, I need to see my kids. He's like, nope, click, boom, and just, shuts the whole place down. This was really cool for me, because it's this is something we complained about in basically every slasher, but specifically last season, all that kind of stuff was, it's good to see police being proactive, and this guy was proactive as hell. One other weird thing about him, just real quick, is that he wears jeans the entire episode. I don't know. But I guess that's a nice little character trait that he has going on. So anyway, locked school down. Everybody's bottled in. This is what they call a bottle episode of a TV show. Most TV shows have them where you basically save money on the budget by sticking to one location for the entire time. Very cool. What I liked specifically about this bottle episode is that it was very reminiscent of the Breakfast Club in a lot of ways. They're all locked in the library, not detention, but they're locked in, other reasons. And they have to, even sneak out to go to somebody's locker and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. Because basically, what this TV show, at least this TV show, let alone Scream as a series, at least the first one, is John Hughes' slasher movie. So I thought that was really cool that it's okay, from there it basically jumps right into Brooke just standing there drenched in blood, just staring off crazy. And Maggie circling her, taking photos, saying it's for evidence. I can't help but think, maybe by the end of this episode, I don't think that, but how much Maggie might just get off on taking pictures of her work or just, the work of a psychopath. I don't know. That's a nice touch. Just something creepy that I was thinking throughout that scene. I was like, ooh, you're loving this, aren't you, Emma's mom? Another thing about this episode is the teacher, Miss Lang, I believe is her name. She comes back. She's much more pivotal. Basically, every single character came back in this episode and was really pivotal. Like this, again, great fucking episode. The sheriff starts interrogating everybody. We go into Noah getting interrogated, and he's saying that, like, now that Piper's home, like, the accomplice is finally coming out to finish the job. And, he's probably right. So then we jump right to everyone locked up in the library. There's a lot of stuff they even did with Emma in this episode. Like, there was not really a misstep in this entire episode, and it all started basically here with that Emma's starting to, like, get her arc. Like, every single person thinks she's the killer, and truthfully, I think she's starting to think that she might be the killer. Not that idea hasn't fully formed yet, but I think that's where her mind is going to start heading. Haley chick, she finally comes back in, and I gotta just point it out. It's like, okay, so we keep getting more and more Haley. What happened to the kid who got stabbed? Okay, look, you could say that he's in the hospital or whatever, but still, like, wouldn't he be out of the hospital by now? He only got stabbed with an ice pick. I mean, I've never been stabbed with an ice pick. I don't know how long it takes to recover from that kind of thing, but still, like, they just don't mention him ever again. And later in the episode, she's getting walked through the halls, and she's the one who sees that they're looking through the lockers. She's like, oh my God, they're looking through the lockers. And she's talking on the phone to somebody. And I can only assume that that's him that she's talking to, which is awesome, which just makes me think that he's, like, in the school creeping around, putting on the costume, all this kind of stuff. Like, but, I mean, that's the other great thing about this episode is every single person had such great, like, killer shade, like, thrown on them, like, every single person. And anyway, so she definitely did too, and she's a favorite, like, killer theory of mine. Some people have said that she's obvious, but I don't know. I kind of like that the opening prank killers end up being the killers. And another reason specifically is because it became really obvious in this episode to me what a follower and frequent commenter, always read the comments of these videos, Perry Littleton, I believe, pointed out. Perry always got good stuff, been following us around for all these videos for a while. Great guy. Great theories all the time. Anyway, so he pointed out that what Haley's function is, as far as, writing goes, is she speaks for the student body. And I was like, oh, right, that makes sense. That's really good. Good catch on you. And that became really more stated in this episode. I mean, the whole student body, basically, that's another element that I loved about this episode, is not only, like, the community, because it brought in the parents, and how do the parents deal with all this kind of stuff. Just even though they're outside, it makes you think about that aspect of it. All the other students got involved with all the looks, and then the beating up Gustavo, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, she totally is the voice for them, and they use that really well. And I especially like the idea because, like, whatever, who cares, I'll just talk about it. Me and Nate talked about it a lot, and we were both basically, like, going into our own separate, what we would do for season 2. And my whole thing was introduce, the other students, and have, like, the year younger than them or whatever, all be playing more pivotal roles. Anyway, the conclusion I came to after, like, thinking it all through, is that the killer would be revealed to not have a connection to Brandon James, which I'm hoping that this season does, because thinking in long game, what they want to do is, like, Brandon James is a central mystery that we can't have solved until later. So what they want to do is, and what they should do, is have this season not be Brandon James centric. And I only mean that in the way that, like, the killer shouldn't be Brandon James motivated. The killer should be, and again, this was my approach, hopefully this is what they're doing, the killer should be motivated by nothing other than what happened in the first season. Hopefully that's what they're doing, but my approach would have been that it was all, like, the younger kids, basically, or the other kids in the school. At least 2, maybe more, are all basically after the Lakewood 6, and so hopefully that's what they're going for. Not to throw too many spoilers out there if you guys haven't seen Scream 3. Actually, I'm not going to spoil Scream 3, but I'm going to give you a cool little behind the scenes thing. is that Kevin Williamson's original script for was not what it ended up being. It was actually, it took place, it was back in Woodsboro, and Sydney returned to Woodsboro. So did the killer. And what it ended up being is, like, they ended up having a party at the end. Everybody, like, all the kids got killed. Basically, like, Sydney finds her way to the party, you know, and she walks in the front door, and she's waiting for the killer to pop out. She's just amongst all these and then all the dead bodies start sitting up, and it's revealed that, like, all of the, like, main characters that you thought were victims were all the killer. And so now they all have Sydney surrounded, and, like, how amazing would that have been? And I don't really hold it against, like, the studio was basically like, oh, we're not going to do that script, so he had to write the lame version that we got. And he didn't write most of it. Some guy named Aaron Kruger did. So we didn't get that. And the only reason we really truthfully didn't get that, and I understand this from the studio's point of view, is this script got turned in late 1999 because Scream 3 came out in March of 2000. It was right after Columbine, and they just couldn't handle that kind of thing at the point. So anyway, slight digression from the show, but getting back to it, it would be cool if the student body was represented by her, which it is, and she ended up being the killer, and it had nothing to do with Brandon James. Okay, so anyway, back to the episode. Audrey then is in the shower room with Brooke. You know, Brooke finally comes out in a towel. I'm sorry, I have to point that out. So she comes out, and her and Audrey have a talk. And this is another thing that I really liked about the episode, is how they paired people up. So we got Audrey and Brooke, which is one of my favorite parts from the last episode of last season, was just seeing them together. So anyway, Brooke and her friends now, so she's asking her how she's doing. And Brooke was actually pretty good in this episode. Like, as much as I like Brooke and I'm a Brooke supporter, I'm not somebody who's going to argue that she's a great actress. Her line delivery is always, like, spotty at best. But she was really good in this episode. She can handle being upset and the crying and, like, the going crazy stuff. And one of my favorite shots of this series has got to be one of the last shots of this episode, where she just goes in the pool and starts screaming. I love Brooke, and I'm glad they're figuring out kind of like what to do with her, and or the actress is starting to get a little bit more spot on. Audrey's like, how are you doing? She's like, I'm really not doing well at all. She's so sweet. I feel so bad for her. And she tells Audrey about the text, blah, blah, blah. Audrey's like, maybe the text didn't come from Jake, which is something that Brooke probably should have thought of before now. But, you know, poor Brooke. She's a little sweetheart, so nothing held against her. And then the episode had one of its few missteps, but at the same time, I'm sorry, I'm not going to lie to you. There's another part of me that's like, good for you, show. And that was really cool, because I was like totally conflicted in this moment, and I'm still conflicted at this point. No, I'm not. I'm not going to lie. I'm not conflicted at all. I loved it. It's a really emotional part, everything. And she's like, oh, well, they took off my clothes. What am I supposed to wear? And I'm like, don't do it. Don't fucking do it, show. I was waiting for kind of a tender moment where Audrey, like, maybe gives her some of her clothes. I mean, they're in a locker room. They can find clothes. That Audrey, like, gives her a jacket or something, and they both look down. And I'm like, don't do it, show. Don't fucking do it, show. Audrey pulls up a cheerleading outfit. Now, as a, just like a human being in this world, and more specifically a writer, I was like, oh, come on. Like, what are you doing here? But, you know, I'm sorry, I gotta do it. It was like, the dude in me was like, that's so fucking awesome. And just like the horror fan in me, like, there's nothing better than seeing, like, a cheerleader running around all, like, disheveled and bloody. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a psychopath, but, you know, we all watch this show, we all like this show. That's the kind of stuff we like to see. So I'm sorry that it was kind of at the expense of Brooke, but at the same time, Brooke, honey, you look really good disheveled and crying and in a cheerleader's outfit. Maybe I'm revealing too much about myself right now. But anyway, small qualm, still loved it in the end. So then Noah gets released back into general population, and he gets ignored by Zoe. She's giving him sketchy looks, and Eli pops up being sketchy. But again, everybody was sketchy this episode, so not even that bothered me. This is the first episode. Eli didn't bother me. Maggie didn't bother me. The sheriff's just, not the sheriff, the mayor is just kind of like, bleh. Like, I could do without him altogether. But, he's good cannon fodder. But, as we all know, they're not going to make him cannon fodder because he has to end up being part of the backstory with everybody. And then there was this really, really, like, nice moments, is how do you make cell phones, like, scary again? And it's not even so much how do you make them scary, but how do you add, like, a new gag, a new element to all of this stuff that we've already been getting. So Emma gets a phone call. She goes amongst the bookshelves and looks at her phone, and her phone's not ringing. Like, let alone where it ends up going from there, but that's just a good gimmick. That's a good moment. And when, like, what would you do? Like, this is just perfect. Like, you look, cell phone's not ringing, so she has to, like, look in her backpack, and she pulls out another phone. Like, that's some good stuff right there. So anyway, she pulls out the phone. Eli peeking through the bookshelf, being a fucking creeper. So anyway, she finds that she pulls out Jake's phone. Now, here's one thing that I want to make fun of about the show, but it's a slight thing, and I think that this is one of those things that happens basically, I think, at a studio level, basically, where they don't trust that we're paying close enough attention. And if they knew anything about the audience for this show, they would know that that's fucking ridiculous, because we notice every single thing about this show. I thought that it was very cool of them and very mature that she looks at the phone, and well, I'll get to what it said in a second, but just visually communicating information. She looks at the phone. It doesn't say Jake Fitzgerald at the top or anything like that. It just has the background is his truck. Every single person who watches the show in that moment knew that this was Jake's phone. Okay? Good. Mature. That's visual storytelling. I commend you for that episode. 2 scenes later, she brings Kieran into the bookshelf, and she's like, oh my God, like, I found this phone. And he's like, oh my God, is that Jake's phone? And she's like, and she literally, oh God, she literally turns the phone over, and there is a fucking sign literally on the phone that says, property of Jake. It's like, ah. And I could just see the studios like, I think we might confuse people. Our audience is stupid, and they won't pick up on that. So, you need to put a sign that says this is Jake's phone. Fuck. And anyway, not only do they, like, are they looking at something that says Jake, Kieran's like, oh my God, is that Jake's phone? And she's like, this is Jake's phone. Like, basically, the only thing they didn't do is, like, stop and look at the camera and be like, does everybody out there understand that this is Jake's phone? Anyway, these are small things to me. We already got it. We're all smart. We're picking up on much more than that. If we weren't picking up that this is Jake's phone, what the whatever. Stupid. And then we get Gustavo talking to everybody in their little circle. And we get some horror movie call-outs. We get call-outs to Killing Room, Devil, When a Stranger Calls, and something else I can't remember. Anyway, so he's like, why, if anyone's ever seen a horror movie, we know that you keep saying, like, someone outside is trying to do this. Like, if you know anything from those movies, it's always the killer inside the house type thing. And I'm sorry. I'm glad they gave this line to Kieran, because I don't think anybody else, maybe, no, Noah could pull off anything. So yeah, give it to Noah. But other than that, they give it to Kieran. I'm glad, because it was a fucking terrible line. It's like, wait, so you mean they didn't lock him out? They locked him in with us. Bom, bom, bom. Not a terrible line, very cheesy though. Anyway, so cue close-up of Eli at that moment. Anyway, so Emma takes Kieran aside, shows him the phone, the whole Jake's phone thing, blah, blah, blah. Who cares about all that? Okay, so then we had some Brooke, her father drama, whatever, moving past that, and we get back to Noah and Zoe. Okay, so they're setting this whole thing up pretty well, and we all know that they're going to get together, because unfortunately, we all saw the trailer where they kiss on some kind of dock or whatever. I'm sorry if I'm ruining that, but it was in the trailer, so what are you going to do? And I have to say, like, it's not that I was totally against Zoe, it was just like, at the beginning of the series, I guess that's all it was, where I was like, stop introducing new characters. Like, I want to know what my old favorite characters are up to. Like, don't fuck. So I had something against Zoe. I totally don't have that against her now. Or Gustavo, or the sheriff, or anybody. Like, now they're all integrated. Now I'm fine with everything, basically. And not just that, but Zoe really isn't given much to do in this episode other than give sketchy looks. But like I said, every single person was given sketchy looks in this episode. It was like the director basically just made a round in that room where he's like, okay, so every single person in this room now needs to sketchily look at the camera, preferably towards Emma or Audrey, but make a sketchy look. And did we get every single person? Yep. Okay, good. Anyway, so I really like Zoe. She wasn't given much to do in this episode, but I mean, she's adorable, and she's a good, subtle actress, and so I really like her, and I can't wait for them to start using her more. One little side note, I don't know if this comes later or before, but we finally get the aunt, Kieran's aunt, Eli's mom, back in the show. She like popped up like 3 episodes ago, and now she finally came back just for like one line, just keeping her in the loop, I guess. And I guess she represents the parents outside, because Maggie's inside, the sheriff or the mayor's inside, and we don't know a fucking thing about Noah's family yet. And Audrey's father has just disappeared off the face of the planet. He was like my big thing, and I still think he will be a big thing. Like, he's got to play into the overall story, but again, this season, I think they're going to make it all about the repercussions of last season and kind of like cast off the Brandon James thing so we can pick that up and move on in the next season. So maybe he'll start becoming pivotal in the next season. Anyway, it's Noah and Zoe, and she's reading a book called Without Consent by Jim Clement, I believe is what it was. I meant to research that before I started recording this just to see if there's anything there. If anybody knows anything about that book and maybe how it relates to this, let me know. If anyone out there has actually read it, that would be even better. So they have a cool little conversation, and this is the other thing that I liked about this episode is, like, I don't know if the writer had to write certain lines. That makes sense. Be like, you would get an outline, it'd be like, make sure somebody says this and this and this. Or if he just, I do this. There are certain things that you have to put in a script that you kind of don't want to sometimes. But one way you can kind of get around it, and it all depends on how slick you are and how funny you are as a writer, how you do this. And I thought this guy was really good about it, that every time somebody would say something kind of like stupid, the other character in the conversation would like call them out for it. And I just appreciate that. Like, that's self-deprecation as far as being a writer goes. And it's totally realistic to how people would be if you just randomly said some of these bullshit lines that you have to say in movies and TV. But anyway, he's case in point. He's like, well, how did you feel about how I'm sorry if you're upset about how everything went. She's like, yeah, I am kind of like upset and weird and just would rather be alone right now. And he's like, well, are you talking about what happened last night, meaning the whole like kiss thing, or this, which he's talking about Jake splattering on the fucking stage. And she's like, well, to tell you the truth, me being upset about last night at this point is fucking ridiculous, so no, we're not going to talk about that. And I really appreciated that because it's fucking stupid. But anyway, she asked Noah, do you think it's starting again? He does. He comes out and even says, and this is another thing that Scream, the movies used to do, the show, at least this writer, is picking up on, is that if you're not going to deconstruct horror movies like in dialogue necessarily, there's this other thing that it would do where it would deconstruct screenwriting in general. And Noah does that in this scene where he's like, oh, we're getting to the end of Act 2, which means, and that's totally what this is. Like, that's just fucking perfect. So, yeah, once Jake's body hit the stage, now we're into, if this was a movie, we're into 25 minutes. If this was a movie, Jake's body would have hit the stage at 25 minutes in. So, yeah, we're into Act 2 of this show now, so it's really start picking up, which, again, little side tangent real quick, nobody died in this episode. If I'm not incorrect, nobody died in this episode. I don't think so, no, because the killer only showed up like once. And again, only showed up to Emma. Side note of a side note is that so far, for the most part, and I would have to, it was around Jake, So at least in the last 2 episodes, the killer has shown up like basically once, and it's always just been around Emma. And it's very easy to believe in both instances that she just imagined it. In which case, it kind of makes me think that maybe she didn't, but that could be where they're going because they keep bringing up the whole Fight Club thing, and Eli said, I like to be two different people at different times. So maybe that's kind of what we're getting into. We've talked about the idea that like Audrey might have split personality. Well, maybe it's Emma that does. And Emma is imagining the killer attacking her and then dressing up as it. That was actually, this should just go to show you, that was actually the sequel I wrote to Scream 2. That was my version of Scream 3 when I was like 14 years old. So if the writers are pulling that, you're as smart as a 14-year-old kid. That my idea for Scream 3 was that, killer's attacking. You could still have Sydney being attacked because it's all in her mind. And then Sydney's revealed to be the killer, and she didn't even realize it. And by the way, that was all written before this. I saw those movies that did that a million times. So yeah, again, to those movies and to this show, you're only as smart as a 14-year-old kid. Okay, so my side tangent was that nobody died in this episode. I don't think anybody did. But that just goes to show that when the show is as well written as this and as much fun as this episode was, because, I mean, the reason we watch it is not necessarily for the kills. Yes, I would take more kills, but we watch it for the characters, and this was a character-based episode purely, so that just goes to show that's what we're looking for. I mean, come the last episode, people better start fucking dying, but, you know, we're okay with just these characters. And the last season, I remember I would get pissed off all the time, be like, nobody died this episode. This episode, one, I'm not even 100% sure that nobody did, which nobody did, I mean, I would remember. But two, like, nobody has, like, people haven't been dying, like, much at all. And I don't care, because the show is definitely getting better. Last episode was one of the best episodes, and like I said, this episode is probably the best episode, other than maybe the bowling alley, possibly. This is a genuinely good episode of TV. This show is getting awesome. Please stay on track with this. So anyway, back to Noah and Zoe. Noah says the whole thing is now we're entering into Act 2, and Zoe finally tells him, she's like, oh, I mean, I'm a big fan of the morgue. I just never, ever told you that before, but whatever, that was sweet. I took it as sweet. And that's the thing, is how good she is about her line delivery. That didn't make me be like, oh, well, why didn't you tell him that before, or something like that. She just comes across as a sweet girl who didn't want to, like, fangirl or anything like that. Plus, she came across as a killer, because I don't trust nobody at this point. And then what was kind of cool, and I think it showed what her character could kind of add to this whole thing, is she says, I get why you do it. And she basically goes about psychoanalyzing him. She's like, oh, well, it's how you deal with blah, 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 blah. And that was, again, one of the things that was really cool about this episode. Back to what I was saying, I hope that that's what Zoe starts doing, is adding in a little psychology, but, like, let's not overdo that element, because that could get fucking way too much. But anyway, this episode had its central theme, like, pretty present the entire time, which is that Noah says we all deal with it in our own ways. And this was showing how everybody deals with it. I might be jumping ahead a little bit in saying that we even see how Maggie finally deals with it. And that when Maggie's alone, she's like crying over all this stuff. We got some stuff with Maggie alone in the previous season, but this is one of the few times we really get her alone. And it just showed what her, like, this episode was really, really good about showing, like, reestablishing what everybody's dynamic is going to be. And usually the show didn't even bother to give people dynamics. But not only did this episode give everyone a dynamic, it clearly gave them that dynamic. And now we're moving on forward. And Maggie's, is that, later in the episode, jumping ahead again, she is kicked off the case by the sheriff. I'll get to that later. But just in this one scene, it's showing what she's basically been going through, which is that, she has to deal with all of these kind of things, but she does see it as Emma's friends and potentially Emma the entire time. Or maybe she's the killer and she's getting off on this, but why was she crying at the same time? Anyway. Alright, and sorry if I'm a little bit all over the place. Like I said, I just watched the episode, I'm really hyped up. So anyway, it's Haley being taken to the lockers. She's on the phone with the person. We already talked about that, and she's being sketchy. I think it's the other guy who got stabbed. Where is he? I don't know. So anyway, we go back to the library, and somebody tells them, I forget who even tells them, but they're like, oh, they're starting to search the lockers. It might have been Eli's sketchy ass, probably. And Kieran's like, oh no, I have to go because there's something in my locker that's really suspicious, and I'd rather the cops not find it. And Noah's like, yeah, that doesn't sound suspicious. And Kieran just, I like Kieran's reaction to that. He's just like, nah. Like, he totally gets it. I love it. That was a perfect reaction. Classic Kieran, as I call it. But see, this was great. This was one of the things, again, that I really liked about the episode, is that Kieran, if he does end up being the killer, which I don't necessarily want him to, because I really like Kieran, but at the same time, he has his motivation. So, if Kieran does end up being the killer, he had a fucking gun the entire time, he almost got caught, and then Noah, who's our favorite character, helped him to try and get away with it. But whatever, we'll see about all that. So Kieran's like, I gotta go to my locker, I gotta get something out. And he says, still makes me, I'm smiling right now, still makes me smile. He said, I'll be right back. Which, I mean, come on, if you don't get that reference, you really have not done your research into the show. So he says, I'll be right back. And Noah just looks at him and he's like, I cannot believe he just said that. Perfect. Okay, so then we get into an aspect that I liked a lot, and I just wish there would have been much, much more of this. It was something I was talking about earlier with Brooke and Audrey being in the locker room, is the pair-ups that they gave in this episode. And we finally got Noah and Kieran as a team, Scooby-Doo style, running through the, or Breakfast Club style, running through the halls, trying to get to the locker. I love this. To see the image of those two, like, working together, I got so hyped up. It ended pretty quickly. He gets out, he goes to his locker, and, I mean, go back and look at when Noah's looking through the window at him at his locker. Kind of looks to me that Noah's trying to, like, memorize his locker combination. But, one, Noah's smart enough that if that's what he's doing, and it's believable that that's what he would be doing. But, two, he would have, like, been able to do that before now. You know what I mean? But obviously he's not going to still keep the gun in his locker, but if somebody gets into Kieran's locker, there was that shot of Noah noticing his combination. So anyway, cops pop out, they get Kieran, let me see the bag, finds a fucking handgun in his backpack. And not that it even matters at this point, but like, it's not like a 6-shooter. It's not like a small handgun. It's like a Beretta 9mm that has to have at least 15 bullets in it. And they just pull that out of the bag. It's all chrome and shit. They like pull it out of the bag, dun, 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 and then the act ends. I'm like, oh fuck. So we come back from that act, commercial break, and the sheriff is talking to Kieran, and basically Kieran's like, oh, I used this gun for protection, to protect my friends. It was my dad's gun. I have nothing against Kieran, whatever. If that all makes sense. That all makes sense if it was like a locket or his badge or his taser, even his handcuffs, something. His fucking handgun, are you kidding me? Like, and again, it's nothing against Kieran's character, but to bring it to school, like, are you fucking kidding me? Kieran, the sheriff, for just being like, oh, I'm not gonna, like, give a shit about this. I mean, he does use it to try and bribe him into being his rat, which is really cool. But, you know, okay. And the show, like, is actually pretty damn flippant about this. So, if there are any kids out there who are still in high school and watching this, the show didn't point it out enough. Do not, repeat, do not, this is my public service announcement. Do not ever, 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 ever bring a fucking handgun to school. Kieran would have been butt-fucked for the entirety of the rest of his life. Like, they do not play about that stuff. Like, I remember being in high school and they would find, like, paintball guns in kids' cars and instantly expel them. Cops and da-da. Like, just, they downplayed that so fucking much, especially in, I'm not going to get political, whatever. Anyway, so he says it's his dad's gun, blah, blah, blah. I use it to protect my friends and myself. And the sheriff's like, I'll look past it, but, oh, and this is the other thing, is the sheriff's like, I'll take care of you, you're one of our own. Your dad would have done it for me. And Kieran looks at him, he's like, bullshit, my dad wouldn't have done anything for you. And he's like, what do you really want? And he's like, okay, well, I want you to be the in. And I thought that was kind of be like, that ties Kieran and the sheriff together, which totally makes sense. And it heads towards an arc that I personally would have planned for Kieran, which is for him to, you know, become a cop like his dad. So like season 3 or 4 or something, Kieran's the new sheriff of the town. Anyway, so the thing is I don't want to say they dropped the ball, but they just kind of use it too quickly. Like, seriously, the next scene, Kieran outs himself as a rat to them. You know, it's just, could have been interesting that he's infiltrating the group for the sheriff, because especially how sketchy the sheriff's been acting. My God. So then we cut back to Emma in the library. Eli comes up to her, and she isn't having any of Eli's crap anymore. And he's like, oh, I couldn't help but overhear you. And she's like, you mean creep? Good for you, Emma, calling him a creeper. And he's like, no, I just mean that one man's blah, blah, blah. One man's creep is another man's creep. So she calls him a creep twice. I'm like, good for you, Emma. And then he tells her how to get rid of the phone. Sketchy as hell. Like, everybody is so sketchy in this fucking episode. But he tells her how to get rid of the gun. And then, Kieran comes in and ruins the whole thing. Then it cuts to Noah's now trapped in the halls. He's talking on his phone to Audrey. And this is one thing, because I'm into sound design again. Watch that part really quick again. And they do this really cool thing with the sound design, very subtle, that when it cuts to, it's Audrey talking on the phone, cuts to Noah listening to her. Audrey's voice switches from the killer's voice to Audrey's regular voice in that one shot. Very cool. Alright, then we get in a scene with the sheriff and the mayor, which normally I wouldn't really be up for this. I mean, it's setting everything up, but I just don't really care for the mayor. Anyway, so this scene was actually really cool, because the mayor comes up to the sheriff and he's like, I found Jake like you asked. I'm like, damn. Like, this dude has a dark sense of humor. But I mean, that was kind of funny, but very dark. So yeah, that was pretty great. And he's like, well, you don't really think that I'm responsible for that. And then he drops the mic. He says, no, of course not. You would never drop a body on your daughter. Now, a freezer in the garage, that's more your style. Drops the mic, walks right the fuck out. I'm like, yeah, get some. Not just that, but it's like, okay, obviously, duh. Now we know that he knows this dude's really sketchy past, so he's really protecting him. Sketchy sheriff acting sketchy, just like his son. Okay, so then, back in the library, Emma confronts Haley, and Haley's all like, oh, again, speaking for the student body, she's like, yeah, we're all afraid of you. All your friends are gonna die. And then she's saying stuff like, Piper didn't touch a hair on your head and you shot her in the face before she could tell anybody anything. I'm like, damn. And Emma starts to walk away. She's like, your whole family is crazy. Whenever there's a killer, there's always a crazy Duval left standing. So, duh. Emma turns around and she's just like, fuck you, bitch, pow! And just like slaps the fuck out of her. And not only was I like, good for you, Emma, like, that's what you need to start doing. Start being fucking proactive, girl, and stop like, and there is a scene of it later where she's like, Kieran, you don't believe me. But anyway, that's what I want to see. Like, Emma's taking control of some shit. And so she smacks that bitch in the face hard. She's like, pow, fuck you. Goddamn killer girl. Anyway, so she smacks her. And this is another thing that I liked. And I really don't think they would have bothered to do this unless Haley's going to become a bigger thing later. But Haley fights back at her. Like, she doesn't just take the hit and, like, everyone's like, oh, oh. And those, like, canned gasps that sound designers use. Like, Haley's like, what was that bitch? And just, like, takes Emma down to the ground. Also, showing that Haley is strong enough to at least overtake Emma. But whatever. I mean, it doesn't take much, I would assume, to knock Emma, fucking, the cute little tree that Emma is. Doesn't take much to knock her down. But anyway, boom! And so, everybody's fighting about that. Kieran comes running out with his headphones on, probably just listening to music, but whatever. I don't trust Kieran or anybody at this point. And this is a specific little thing. The person who comes and breaks up the fight to save her is the teacher. And this becomes pivotal just in the way that the one who would help the heroine could always and most usually is the one who helps her the most. Okay, and then we move into Brooke getting interrogated, and this was great. I always love this. I'm always up for it. She says, I think the killer is Seth Branson. So she throws him under the bus bad. And, yeah, I always think it's Seth Branson too, so I'm with you, Brooke. But anyway, so the dad says, oh yeah, we've had a restraining order on him, da-da-da-da-da. So Branson, again, gets mentioned. Hopefully we see him in the next episode. Alright, then we get a quick little moment of Audrey and Noah still on the phone. And Audrey's saying like, oh, I think it's Gustavo, and Noah keeps saying, it's not, over and over and over. And then Audrey's like, well, you need to start believing me, because what if it was me that fell out of the banner and my guts fell out? And Noah doesn't say a thing to that. Like, whoo, just look on his face like, uh-oh, there's trouble in paradise between those two. Alright, and then we get the teacher takes Emma into the room. She fucking locks the door on her. My God, how much sketchier can you get other than every other character in this episode? So the teacher locks her in this place. And this is really cool. Of course, phone rings, blah, blah, blah. Hello, Emma. Of course, love this by now. And just the other sounds on the side of the door and the shadows and everything. Shades come up, the killer's standing there. And this is what I loved. Shades come up, and Emma's first reaction is to jump at the killer. Like, she jumps at the killer and starts, like, banging, trying to get it. Like, picks up a chair, breaks the window, crawls out. She's, like, it's almost like, if that, yeah, big game talking to Emma when you know you can't get to you. But at the same time, that her first reaction seeing the killer now is to, like, attack. Like, good. If this is where they're going with Emma, this is good. This is very good. And so she bursts out in the middle of the thing. She's like, I'm not playing your games anymore. And she runs off. Emma's turning into a little mini warrior here. I like it. Okay, then we have the scene that I talked about earlier where the sheriff basically tells Maggie that she's not going to be able to be on the case anymore. This is like that standard dialogue we've seen a million times where it's like, you're too close to this. You need to step away from it. And so basically what that leaves Maggie's whole arc to be now is she's going to have to go rogue and investigate the whole thing. Awesome. So anyway, she leaves, and then the sheriff does like the sketchiest thing in the entire episode is he takes Jake's phone out, puts it into Jake's hand, I guess to get his fingerprints again or something, puts it into his hand, then goes back and starts looking through all the text messages. So now the sheriff knows that that the mayor was conversing with Jake right before he died and all this kind of stuff. So everybody's getting all types of information on each other, as we see at the very end. Okay, then we had the pretty awesome scene, which we were all waiting for because he's been way too sketchy at this point, is that Gustavo gets the fuck beaten out of him. Audrey calls him out. That was really cool. Shows all the pictures. Whoever draws that stuff, really good artist. Anyway, and this is what I loved, is that the student body is getting more like interactive with all this, and so it becomes like a mob scene, and they all just beat the fuck out of this kid, and beat the fuck out of him. He has like a bloody nose by the end of it, but Gustavo's really tough. It's not like they weren't trying, let me say that. It was like 3 or 4 jocks on him, just like punching and kicking and shit. They tried to break him. Anyway, so Dad comes in, breaks all that up, but very cool. Makes you feel bad for Gustavo. Good scene. Okay, so then it's Emma and the teacher, and she doesn't tell the teacher or the sheriff that the killer attacked her. What is she planning? What I think it is, maybe it's a little bit obvious, is that she was like, I was locked into the room by you, teacher, so I think that it's you, and I'm not going to tell the sheriff, and I'm going to come for you. Please let that be where this goes. Oh, God, please let this be where that goes. I mean, can you imagine if that was the next episode? That would be so badass. That she, like, takes Kieran aside and other people she knows she can trust, and she's like, I think it's the teacher. Let's go get her. And, like, they have to, like, break into the school after, like, nightfall, or break into her house, and they, like, kidnap the teacher and, like, interrogate her. Be like, are you the killer? She can be like, no, I'm not the killer. And be like, yes, you're the killer. Like, that would be fucking badass, but the show's probably not going to go that way. But holy shit, please keep hiring this writer because he's awesome, and that's, I think, where he would go with it. So learn your lesson, MTV Scream, and keep this writer writing. So now we basically finish up the episode with Brooke walking into the pool, which again is probably one of my favorite shots from the entire episode. She goes underwater, she starts screaming, she starts crying. Like, this is a perfect moment. Like, I absolutely loved it, and it's perfect for Brooke. But then, when those violins start, it's like dun 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 dun. That's basically the show's way of saying, "Hey fans, check this shit out." And it was worth that musical cue. In that Noah stole Audrey's phone, and this was really cool because totally makes sense to me at least. Is that it takes him a few tries, but he can figure out what her password is. Like, it just shows how close friends they are. If we didn't already know that, but still. That's how close they are. Anyway, so he figures out her password and totally finds out that she is the accomplice. Like, holy shit, we're in episode 5 and he figures that out. Like, this is great. Like, where does it go from here? This is the first episode where I've been like, holy shit, like, I cannot wait for the next episode. Like, I've been kind of hyped up by episodes of this show before, but this one, you end like that Bi-Curious and The Virgin, which are my favorite things, are really going to start like going at it. If this show does not follow through with how good this episode was in the next one, I'm still going to keep watching it. But if it, like, I thought the last episode was really good, and then this episode was infinitely better. And can you imagine what it's going to be like if the next episode is even better than this one? Holy shit, guys. Like, we have been watching this show. We have been giving it a lot of extra credit. We have been overlooking endless amounts of garbage and trash. What if we were rewarded for it? Can you imagine that? What if it ends up being a show that, like, and I'm not even talking about that it matters in this way, but like massive amounts of people start watching it and like people start talking about it and it becomes like, I wouldn't say Game of Thrones, but it becomes like a thing. And it's not just us diehard fans that are liking it. Like, everybody's like, wow, this show is actually pretty good. How did that happen? Like, reward us for that. We've sat through so much bullshit. Like, turn into a good show. Please. You're on your way. Just turn into a good show. That said, yes, slow clap. This was the best episode of MTV Scream ever. This was genuinely good TV. I can't wait for the next episode. I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. I will see you then. This is Mike. See you next week, guys.